Hello and welcome to the Catalyst Midweek Podcast, where we keep the conversation going from our Sunday sermon. Today, we're talking about a main thing of love calls us to the dangerous places, but brings the greatest rewards. Dave preached on this yesterday. It was Easter Sunday.
Yep.
The place was packed.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was just a great feeling, the entire service.
Yeah.
Everybody did such a great job all day.
Yeah.
It was one of the services with a baptism and testimony from the Jamaica trip that went a couple weeks ago, and just an awesome day. But I thought Dave's message was very timely.
Oh yeah.
What were your thoughts about what Dave was talking about yesterday?
Yeah, I love it because we're starting a new series on the fruit of the Spirit, and the first one is love, which was perfect for the timing of this season because Easter, about Jesus, it's all about love. That's the biggest thing, the overarching theme of Jesus' life. And I love it because the main thing, like John just said, love calls us to the dangerous places.
Yeah.
And when we think about Easter, the most dangerous place for Jesus to go was to the cross. And not because he was going to die, but because he was going to have sin in his life for the very first time.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine.
And not just sin.
Like all sin.
Ever and yet to come.
Yeah,
all
timeless,
at one time.
timeless sin on him at once. And I can't imagine what that would have felt like to somebody who is pure to then all of a sudden become unpure. But it also, the ending part of this main thing is, but brings the greatest reward.
Yeah.
And it's incredible to see the most dangerous place for Jesus bring the biggest reward of all time. So you got these two contrasting ideas of the most dangerous place and the greatest reward, and God calls us to be the exact same way.
Yeah, and that's it for our podcast today. No, but that's good. No, but that's fantastic. I mean, that really is Easter.
Yeah.
This idea that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, comes down from the right hand of God, becomes a human being, which I can't imagine what that felt like for him.
Yeah.
To go from being God, to being the Son of God, sitting at the right hand in glory, and then having to enter one of our bodies, and that's imperfect and that has its flaws and feels pain and all these things, and then to go through this whole life of servitude. Yeah. He came to serve, not to be served, but to serve. And so he comes and he serves his whole life, and then what's his reward at the end? Yeah. He takes on the sin of every man. Yeah. And that's just mind-boggling. Yeah. But that's the kind of love he had. Yeah. And he was willing to do that because not only he loved us, but even more so he loved his Father. Yeah. And it was his Father's will. And I think that's kind of a recurring theme through this whole thing of our love has to have the right direction and the right trajectory, or it's impossible to go to those places. Yeah. When we truly love God, and we truly love Him above all others, above our families, above our spouses, our children, our mothers, fathers, our friends, once we can have that kind of a love, suddenly we go to places where we normally wouldn't go. Yeah. We do things we normally wouldn't do. We tell people about Jesus that we wouldn't even normally talk to. It's the reason why Dave, our senior minister, goes to India every year. A country that is so vehemently against Christianity. Why we have people in our church who left to go to Honduras to live in the murder capital of the world. Yeah. To do ministry. Yeah. It's why a group of 5 of us left a couple weeks ago to go down to Jamaica, which is also another very violent country, and go down and do our best to spread the gospel. Because when you love God, that stuff doesn't seem to be such a big deal. Yeah. And your love actually kind of blinds you a little bit to that danger because all you see is what makes God happy. Yeah. And so I want to do it. Yeah. What was the one thing that really stood out to you from yesterday?
I love the contrast between how he started this sermon. He talked about Jesus and just how great that the dangerous place to the contrasting thing, which we talked about earlier. And then he led off with the example, and then he gave us a kind of command what we should have, which is 1 John 4:19, which is we love because he first loved us. Yeah. Which is completely different from what the world says. Right. The world says you need to love yourself first, and if it doesn't, if the whatever you're doing does not fit in those boundaries of you receiving love, then you just need to stop. That's why people get divorces. That's why people get out of jobs. That's why people leave cities. It's like, well, it's not loving me right now. So the grass must be greener on the other side. And God calls us to a higher standard.
Absolutely.
Where he's like, well, we need to value others above ourselves. We need to love first. And that's just completely different. And I absolutely loved that. And he actually brought up an illustration of a guy. I think he was some sort of priest or pastor. His profile picture on the screen looked like this old guy with a massive beard, kind of looked like Dumbledore from Harry Potter. But it was a situation where he was just filling up his gas, and a guy came up and punched him in the face, and he ran off, and they haven't found him. And he said, I hope that he gets caught, because I want to go up to him and first tell him that I forgive him, and then I want to share Jesus with him. And that's completely different.
It's so foreign
from everything.
Yeah.
What do you think from it?
Well, you were talking about the way people see love today, and I think a lot of people see love today as an emotion. They don't see it as a decision.
Yeah.
And I think if you read the Bible, it's very obvious that love is a decision we make.
Yeah.
It's not something you wait for the warm fuzzies to do.
Yeah.
You know, I love my little 2-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
She drives me nuts right now because she's 2.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
And the terrible twos are real.
Yeah, I believe it.
But as much as she drives me nuts, I'd jump in front of a bus for that kid any day of the week.
Yeah.
You know, I would if there was ever an intruder in my house, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
You know, I will defend my family. I will defend my children. And I make that choice every day.
Yeah.
And I don't always want to love.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not somebody who's really heavily emotionally driven as far as like when it comes to how I lead my daily life. I don't let my emotions lead. I think we've said it before. Emotions are great followers but horrible leaders.
Yes.
And so I try really hard not to be led by my emotion. So for me to love, I just have to decide I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I think a really cool example of this is you wouldn't know this by looking at me, but I work out every morning at 5:45 in the morning, and at the gym I ran into a couple guys who are from a local rehab center here in town, and they've been coming to Catalyst. And I was talking to one of the guys about, why do you come every morning? And he said, because I know it's what's best for me. And he said, and because I know it's best, I come even when I don't want to.
Yeah.
And he said, it's just like Christianity.
Yep.
He said, there are days when I don't want to worship. There are days when I don't want to pray. There's days when I don't want to read my Bible. But I know I really love God when I do it anyways.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of what Dave was talking about yesterday, is this decision that you make that regardless of the situation or the place you are in life or whatever, you continue to love anyways.
Yeah.
And by continuing to love, you continue to obey. And when you obey, that's where this whole dangerous places thing comes into play.
Yeah. Another point that he made was we are charged to become radical lovers of people. And he talked about the situation, I think it was in South Carolina, where that guy came in the all-black church and shot or killed 6 people. I can't remember the exact place. And he said that the natural reaction for people to do that would be an outcry of justice. But the people, the loved ones who passed away because of that murder, they said, well, first we forgive you. And that's completely the opposite.
And that actually made people angry.
Yeah, I remember. He was like,
that actually made people angry that they would forgive him for that. But wow, what a testimony.
I know. And we're charged to become radical lovers of people.
And Rob, let's just shoot straight for a second.
What?
Sometimes people suck.
Yes.
I just said that in a church podcast, but I'm just being honest. Sometimes people just stink sometimes. They really do.
Yeah.
And I think every minister has said it.
Yeah.
It's the church would be an awesome place if it wasn't for people.
Yeah.
And we don't mean that, but
No.
it's that whole thing of, as long as people are involved,
there's going to be failure.
There's going to be failure. There's going to be sin. There's going to be things that you deal with. And so to say you need to be a radical lover of people, that's not as easy as just being black and white on paper.
Yeah.
Or in this case on a screen.
Yeah.
To really love people, that's a hard calling.
Yeah.
It really is. But I think that's where your love for Christ has to be so intense that you love what he loves, and he so intensely loves us that we can't help but love people.
I know. And I think one of the things that Jesus, I do believe that he was completely human. He put his we joke around, call it the God card. He put his God card away and said, no, I'm fully human. But I think he was so successful in that because he had the end goal in mind in everything he did.
Yeah.
Where us as ministers, and Christians, we should have the end goal in mind, and these little frustrations where people get in your way, they do something that hurts you.
Complainers,
whatever. The thing that drives you insane about people, that's just a small little thing. And if we have the end goal in mind, which is one, to bring as many people to Christ as possible,
right,
and two, that we can all have this perfect fellowship with God in the future, whenever Jesus returns, those little things don't really mean anything. They're just like, oh, okay, like they had a bad day or whatever. It's like there's something so much greater in the future. And I think that's why Jesus, he was so successful in his ministry, was because he knew what was coming. And all those people that spit on him, just kicked him out, the torture that he went through, the end goal was so much greater than the current situation that he was in.
Yeah, could you imagine being Jesus hanging on a cross? You're feeling the weight of all that sin like you were talking about earlier. But yet he looked out on the people and he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Yeah. What?
How?
Yeah,
I mean, I can't, because they're spitting on him.
Yeah.
They're mocking him. They're making fun of him. And the whole time he's looking on them with compassion and love.
Mm-hmm.
Yet the whole time, every sin they've ever committed, including the ones they're doing right there, he's wearing that like a jacket.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing had to feel like it weighed 1 million pounds.
Yeah.
And somehow in the midst of all that, he never loses that compassion and love for those people.
Yeah.
If that doesn't tell you how amazing of a person Jesus was, I mean, I don't think that's possible for me to love someone like that.
Yeah.
I want to say, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'm a spiritual giant who can. Come on, man! Like, that's so hard.
That is hard.
And the fact that he was able to love in that way is mind blowing.
Yeah.
Absolutely mind blowing.
And I also love it in Scripture because Jesus was mocked even by the spiritual leaders of the time.
Yeah.
He would just, he would be looked down upon. They had the same profession, but for some reason he was lower than them just because he thought the right way. But I can't imagine how what blew my mind is he never went to the disciples and complained to them.
No.
He never was like, can you look at that guy over there? Like, can you believe he said that to me? Like, that's ridiculous. Like, he never did that. And I know whenever like something bad happens to, not bad, but a frustrating situation comes up in my life, the first person I want to go to talk to you about it, maybe get some insight. I want to talk to Dave, maybe get a little bit of insight, like how should I handle a certain situation. And all Jesus did was he went to his Father.
Yeah. Every time.
He went to prayer first, where our initial reaction is, well, I want to see what they think. Maybe they think the same thing that I do. And Jesus had such a higher standard of love for these people that he never even thought that. Mm-hmm. That blows my mind.
Yeah, his inability to sin is just mind-boggling. The very last thing he talks about in this, and it goes through kind of 3 different ways. He says, "Love calls you to the dangerous places in life, to your enemies." And I think you already talked about that with the guy who got hit for no reason and all that. But then he says, in forgiveness next, which was, we also talked about that, the idea of forgiving in spite of. But the very final thing is, but it brings the greatest rewards.
Yeah.
I mean, and you touched on that right at the beginning with Jesus and when he died on the cross and took on all that sin. Well, now he made it possible for all of us to spend eternity in heaven.
Yeah.
So what an award, or what a reward for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think of missionaries who go to these countries middle of nowhere. And sometimes they never come back.
Mm-hmm.
But years down the road, because they were the first one in there, they open the door a little bit for the next person, who opens the door a little bit for the next person, which down the road, you could have an entire village that's won to Christ because of one person's love going into a very dangerous place, and they'll never see that reward, but that reward's there. Reuben Langat was a member of our church for a long time here, and now he's ministering in Indiana, but he's from Kenya. And he said he'll never forget that there was one missionary that came to their village to tell them about Jesus, and it transformed their entire community. Just one person. And he went to a place where he didn't speak the language. He didn't know the people. He just knew he loved them and they needed Christ. And he brought Christ to them, and their whole world changed forever. Now Reuben is a church planter who's planted multiple churches in Kenya, has multiple ministries that are running in Kenya, is part of a ministry called Heart of Africa, which is in multiple countries throughout Africa. And I mean, he is just nailing it. And it's because of this love that he has, but it all comes from the love of one missionary who came to his village years and years and years and years ago and showed them Christ. And I think a lot of times when we hear these things, if you go to the dangerous places for the greatest reward, we think you got to do this big thing, you've got to have this big act. But truthfully, Billy Graham came to Christ because he went to a revival one night in a small church. It wasn't some national speaker or anything like that. And someone breathed life into him, basically, and showed him Christ. And his life was changed. And then look at all the people he changed. And so I think if we go into every moment realizing that moment could be a life-changing moment for somebody else, that could be a life-changing moment for a lot of people. Because in the moment when Billy Graham decided, I'm going to follow Christ, literally thousands of people's lives were changed in that one instant. Now, it didn't happen until years later, but it happened right there. And when we go into those dangerous places, where maybe our family, where we're afraid we're going to be ridiculed and beat up because we're trying to share something with our family that they don't believe, or our coworkers, going into a job where most of your coworkers are full-blown atheists. I've got a friend named Adam who worked in Kenosha, Wisconsin at a place where everybody was an atheist, basically. And he would be ridiculed all the time, but one guy listened to him, and his life was changed. And it's like, it's those kinds of things where we realize if the dangerous places may not be Africa or Honduras or Jamaica or India, that dangerous place could be the factory you work in. That dangerous place could be the school that you go to, where you could face ridicule, where you could be shunned, where you could be pushed away, where you could lose friendships, where you could break ties with family members. When you go into those moments and you share Christ and you love them intentionally, the rewards are unreal. And we saw that yesterday with Shane Short. One of the members of our church who got to baptize his brother-in-law.
Incredible. Who
he's been working with and praying for years. And who, from what I hear, was kind of against the whole thing from the beginning. And there's a lot of risk involved when you go to family who are against what you believe. And you try and share Christ with them.
I agree with that. I would even argue that the most dangerous place to the majority of Americans is their coworkers or their current situation, whether it's family or work. They're more likely to go to a country where there's a chance that they could be killed than go into their current work situation that they see the people every single day and share.
You're right.
I know so many people that act completely different at work than they do at church, when they're hanging out with friends, when they go to mission trips, or and then you see them at work and they're a completely different person. And they're more terrified to just reach out in their current state.
Because that affects every single day. Whereas a mission trip affects 1 week.
1 week or a
and
month,
you're gone.
Right?
You may never see those people again.
I know. And so if your dangerous place is the most terrifying place for you to share Christ is your workplace, it's going to be difficult. You might lose some friends, but the reward of possibly getting one person to hear the gospel message will give you more joy in that instant than however long you've been at that place working. I know working at a certain place for many years, getting one person to come to Catalyst, and that person, every time, whenever I am having a bad day in ministry, a frustrating day, I just remember that one person, and it gives me so much more joy. It's like it's all worth it because this person's still going to church, and I would encourage anybody who's doing that.
I know as a minister, one of the greatest joys is when you pour into a student as a youth minister, and that student then goes into ministry and goes beyond what you've ever done.
Yeah.
To me, that's true joy.
Yeah.
When I get to see a former student of mine being far more successful than I've been, and to see them have such a huge, I would call it a family tree of people they've brought to Christ, who have brought someone to Christ, who's brought someone to Christ. And to know that I just got to play my little part there at the beginning.
So cool.
It's just amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It's so cool. Well, I think we've covered everything that Dave kind of brought to the table.
I think, actually, if we would have preached this would probably been a whole lot more effective. No, I'm kidding.
Well,
no,
this has been incredible. John, thank you so much for sharing your insight. I really enjoy talking to you every week. And we've got a couple more weeks that me and you get to be together, which is going to be great. But this has been the Midweek Podcast. I hope you enjoyed just a little insight of me and John give to what Dave brought to the table on Sunday. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.